It was 3 a.m., and the wedding hall was still alive with last-minute chaos. White lights draped from the ceiling like fallen stars, and the scent of roses and jasmine clung to the air. I stood outside the main hall, my heart pounding hard enough to drown out the music. If you're watching this video, please subscribe to the Social Old channel and tell me in the comments where you're listening to. My revenge story from, I want to know how far it has reached. My daughter, Emily, had just slammed the door in my face. "I don't want you here," she said, her voice trembling but cold. "Not today, not ever." I froze. After raising her, standing by her through heartbreaks, exams, and every dream she ever chased, this was how she repaid me. My hands shook as I tried to speak, to ask why, but she turned away and disappeared inside, leaving me alone under the cruel glare of the fluorescent lights. I remembered the first time she met Mark, her fiancé. He seemed kind, polite, and funny, just the kind of man I had hoped she'd find. But recently, things had started to feel off. Mark had become distant, secretive, and arrogant. He spoke to me with barely disguised impatience whenever I tried to offer advice. Emily defended him, saying I was overthinking everything. Now, at this wedding hall, my heart sank as I realized my worst fears might come true. Not because Emily didn't love me anymore, but because someone else, someone she trusted, was trying to rewrite our family story without my voice. Inside, the ceremony had already started. The officiant was checking his notes, and the bridesmaids were holding their bouquets nervously. Suddenly, there was a commotion at the altar. My stomach dropped. Mark had paused, looking at Emily with wide eyes. The room went silent. I can't do this," he said. I can't marry someone who doesn't even let their own father in the room." Gasps filled the hall. Emily's face turned pale, and she clutched her bouquet like it was a lifeline. Her friends whispered frantically, trying to calm the chaos, but Mark stepped back, shaking his head. I wanted to run in, to grab Emily and explain that I was here for her no matter what. But even from the doorway, I could see her tears glistening under the bright lights. She had chosen to believe a lie over the bond we shared. And now, her entire wedding was collapsing because of it. I remember thinking, in that stunned, heart-wrenching moment, how fragile happiness could be. One word, one misunderstanding, one act of pride could undo years of love and planning. I had imagined Emily walking down the aisle, radiant and happy, but instead, the aisle was filled with tension, whispers, and disbelief. Finally, the wedding planner approached me, unsure what to do. I stayed back, silent, because any move I made could make things worse. Emily turned to me once, her eyes full of hurt and anger, and then she walked past me toward Mark. He shook his head, refusing to take her hand. I didn't know whether to cry or scream. All I could do was watch as the day we had all been waiting for, the day she had dreamed of since childhood, crumbled in front of my eyes. And I realized something painful. Sometimes, love isn't enough to fix a rift, especially when pride and misunderstandings get in the way. That night, standing alone in the quiet hall, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever happened next, Emily and I had a long road ahead. A road that would require honesty, courage, and a willingness to face the truth, no matter how bitter it might be. I remember the day Emily was born like it was yesterday. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and flowers, and her tiny fingers wrapped around mine with a grip that felt stronger than anything I had ever known. From that first moment, I swore to protect her from the world, to guide her through every hardship, and to celebrate every little triumph along the way. She was my joy, my laughter, my reason for waking up early even on the toughest days. I remember walking her to her first day of kindergarten, holding her tiny hand and feeling a mix of pride and fear. "Be brave, Emily," I whispered, "and always remember I'm right here." She looked up at me, eyes wide and trusting, and nodded with that little smile that could light up an entire room. Over the years, we built our life together in quiet, ordinary ways. Saturday mornings meant pancakes and cartoons. Summer evenings were spent lying on the grass in our backyard, counting stars and talking about her dreams. She wanted to be a writer, a teacher, an astronaut, sometimes all three at once. And I encouraged her in every one of them, clipping her stories onto the fridge and attending every school play, recital, and spelling bee. Even in teenage years, when the world became confusing and her moods swung like a storm, I was always there. We shared secrets and whispered truths late at night under the covers, promising each other that no one, no boy, no misunderstanding, no adult problem could come between us. I thought that bond would last forever. I thought we had something unbreakable. And yet, here I was, standing outside a wedding hall, feeling that bond crumble in front of my eyes. A week ago, Emily had called me in tears. She told me she was engaged to Mark and that he was perfect for her. I was happy for her, truly. I even offered to help with the wedding planning to make sure her day was everything she dreamed of. But soon, the calls became tense. She seemed nervous around me. She stopped sharing details and started avoiding me. Finally, the truth came out. Mark didn't want me at the wedding. At first, I thought it was just nerves, a silly misunderstanding. I tried to convince Emily that my only desire was to be there for her, but every message I sent seemed to widen the distance between us. And now, on the morning of her wedding, that distance had become a wall. She had chosen to shut me out completely. I tried to remember the happy times, clinging to them like lifelines. I recalled the first time she rode a bike without training wheels. She had fallen countless times, scraped her knees, and cried, but I stayed with her, holding her hand until she finally pedaled down the street on her own. The pride in her eyes that day was something I would never forget. Then there were the small moments, too. Cooking dinner together, laughing at our burnt pancakes, making silly faces at each other in the mirror. She had always said those were her happiest memories, simple, ordinary, but ours. And now, those memories felt like distant echoes, overshadowed by the fear and anger that had crept into our lives in just a few short weeks. I realized then that this wasn't just about a wedding. It was about trust, respect, and love. Emily had grown up, and she was making her own choices, but to completely erase me from this milestone felt like erasing the years we had shared. I wanted to shout, to beg her to see me, to understand that my love had never wavered. Yet I stood there silently because anything I said could make her angrier. I could see her inside, glowing in her white dress, and my heart ached. I remembered her first dance recital, how she had tripped and fallen, and I had rushed to her side, holding her while she cried. "It's okay," I told her then. "I'll always catch you." And now I wasn't allowed to catch her. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes, remembering the way she used to climb into bed with me during thunderstorms, trembling from the thunder and lightning. I would hold her close, whispering, "It's just rain, baby. Nothing can hurt you while I'm here." That was our promise, and it hurt me deeply to realize that, on her wedding day, she didn't believe it anymore. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had always encouraged her independence, her confidence, and her strength. I had always taught her to stand up for herself, to make her own choices. But now, standing outside that wedding hall, I wondered if I had made a mistake in letting her grow so strong that she felt she could push me away entirely. And through all of this, a part of me couldn't stop hopping that when she saw me there, waiting silently, she would remember those small, ordinary moments of love we had shared. That she would remember the pancakes, the bikes, the whispered promises during storms. That she would realize that I wasn't an obstacle, but the one person who had always been by her side. Because no matter what happened today, no matter what Mark or anyone else thought, my love for Emily was unwavering. It had survived scraped knees, heartbreaks, and teenage rebellion. It had survived every worry, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt. And deep down, I believed that somehow it could survive this too. I had begun to suspect Mark's true nature weeks ago, but I refused to believe it. Emily was happy, or at least she seemed happy. He smiled, he held her hand, he spoke in gentle tones. On the surface, he appeared perfect. But behind that smile was something cold and controlling, a man who believed love was about possession, not trust. It started subtly. He criticized everything I said. "Don't talk to Emily about finances," he once snapped over the phone. "She doesn't need your advice." He began to isolate her from friends, from family, subtly twisting her perception of those who loved her most. Every call I made to check on her ended with a polite but distant tone. Something wasn't right. Then, one afternoon, I saw him for what he truly was. I went to their apartment unannounced, just to drop off a wedding gift, and heard Emily crying before I even reached the door. The moment I stepped in, the room fell silent. She was sitting on the couch, her face buried in her hands, and he was packing angrily in front of her. "I told you not to call your father," he shouted, his voice sharp and cutting. "Do you want everyone to know what a terrible parent he is?" Emily flinched at his words as if expecting a blow. Her shoulder was red, and when she looked up at me, her eyes were wet, filled with fear and shame. "Mom, it's nothing. Really." But I knew better. I could see the marks on her arms, the trembling in her hands, the broken spirit that came from months of being bullied and controlled. My heart ached. I had always known life had challenges, but never had I imagined someone could manipulate and humiliate my daughter the way Mark did. "I don't want to marry him," she whispered, her voice cracking. He scares me, Mom. I thought I loved him, but..." Her words broke off into sobs. I knelt beside her and took her hands. "Emily, listen to me. You deserve love that lifts you, not love that hurts you. You don't have to stay with anyone who makes you feel small, worthless, or afraid." She leaned into me, shaking. "But the wedding, the family, everyone will judge me." "Better to stand up now than to regret it forever," I said, my own tears falling. "You are stronger than him, and I am here, always." That was when Mark entered the room, his face twisted in rage. He glared at me like I was the enemy, like I had somehow ruined his perfect plan. "Stay out of this, woman. This is between Emily and me. You have no right." "I have every right," I shouted. "She is my daughter, and I will not let you control her, manipulate her, or scare her into a life of misery." He laughed, a cruel, mocking sound. "She chose me. She'll do what I say. And you're nothing but an obstacle." Every word he said was like a knife to my heart. The man Emily loved, or thought she loved, was a tyrant in disguise. I felt rage rising inside me, hot and fierce. I wanted to protect her from him with everything I had. I wanted to show the world that this man was not who he claimed to be. Emily's sobs became louder. "Mom, please, don't make it worse." But it was already worse. He had revealed himself. The cruel, selfish, controlling man who believed he could buy love, intimidate respect, and erase family ties. He had shattered our bond, threatened our peace, and humiliated my daughter in ways I couldn't let pass. I took a deep breath and faced him. "Mark, this ends now. You cannot marry my daughter while treating her like this. You cannot walk into a wedding hall and pretend everything is fine after what you've done." He sneered, stepping closer. "Try and stop me." I didn't move. My love for Emily gave me courage I didn't know I had. "I am not stopping you. I am showing Emily that she doesn't need to be afraid, that she doesn't need a man who treats her like property." In that moment, Emily looked at him with something I hadn't seen before, clarity. Fear was still there, but now it was mingled with defiance. She realized who he truly was, and she recoiled. That night, as we left the apartment together, Emily's arms around me, I could feel the weight of betrayal lift slightly. We had faced the truth. We had uncovered the mask he had worn. And even though the wedding day loomed like a storm, we knew one thing for certain. Emily's happiness could not be traded for appearances or societal pressure. Mark had shown his true face. The man who smiled in public but humiliated and controlled in private had been exposed. And I couldn't help but feel a fierce hatred for him, not just for what he had done to Emily, but for what he had almost taken from her, a lifetime of joy, trust, and love. After seeing Mark's true face, I knew the wedding couldn't go on without exposing him. But I also knew I had to be careful. Emily was still scared, and Mark was cunning. One wrong move, and he could manipulate her back into believing his lies. I needed proof, evidence that could not be ignored. The first step was gathering information. I started by talking to people who had interacted with Mark outside our family. I visited the neighbors near his apartment. Mrs. Thompson, an elderly lady who had watched Emily grow up, told me quietly, "I've seen him yell at her more than once, and she's terrified to speak up." I was going to say something, but I didn't know how. She handed me a small notebook she had kept, documenting the dates and incidents. Every angry shout, every tense confrontation, written down in careful handwriting. It was a small but valuable piece of evidence. Next, I contacted Emily's friend, Sarah, who had been with her through college. Sarah revealed how Mark had isolated Emily from friends, convincing her that everyone else didn't understand their relationship. She also mentioned a video she had taken of one particularly cruel argument, where Mark humiliated Emily in the living room while she cried silently. Sarah handed me the clip on her phone, and I watched it, my stomach twisting with anger. The man who smiled in public had become monstrous behind closed doors. I realized we needed legal guidance, so I called Mr. Jenkins, a family lawyer who had known Emily since she was a child. When I explained the situation, he didn't hesitate. "We can put a stop to the wedding if it's necessary," he said firmly. "We can gather proof of coercion and intimidation. This isn't just about a wedding, it's about protecting Emily's rights." Having a lawyer on our side made me feel less powerless. It was like holding a shield against someone who thought he could control everything. Meanwhile, I began planning small interventions. Every moment had to be calculated. I arranged for Sarah and Mrs. Thompson to be near the venue on the wedding day. I set up discreet recordings of Mark's private conversations with Emily, capturing moments where he belittled her or pressured her to proceed with the ceremony. It felt like stepping into a spy movie, but every detail mattered. I also spoke to Emily privately, helping her understand that she wasn't alone. "We have allies," I told her. "You're not facing him by yourself. We'll make sure the truth comes out and you'll be safe." Her hands trembled in mine, but I could see the fire returning to her eyes, the same fire I had seen when she learned to ride a bike or when she stood up to bullies at school. She was still scared, but she was no longer willing to let Mark dictate her life. As we built our case, tension grew like a storm on the horizon. Each piece of evidence added weight to our plan, but it also made the stakes higher. Mark had no idea we were organizing this. He still believed he could walk into the wedding hall, smile for the cameras, and manipulate everyone around him. He had no clue that a small army of supporters, neighbors, friends, a lawyer, and a mother who refused to give up was quietly preparing to confront him. By the night before the wedding, our groundwork was nearly complete. I had photographs, videos, eyewitness accounts, and legal advice. Emily had agreed to stand with me no matter what, and our allies were ready to step in if needed. The suspense was unbearable, but it was necessary. We weren't just preventing a wedding, we were exposing a lie, protecting a young woman's future, and preparing to challenge a man who thought he could rewrite someone else's life. As I lay in bed that night, unable to sleep, I kept thinking about how fragile happiness could be and how quickly fear could silence truth. But I also felt hope. Hope that tomorrow, all the hidden cruelty would finally come to light and Emily could reclaim her life. We were ready and nothing, no threat, no lie, would stop us from confronting the truth. The morning of the wedding felt like walking into a storm. The hall was decorated beautifully, with chandeliers sparkling and flowers lining the aisle. Guests were arriving, chatting and laughing, oblivious to the tension brewing beneath the surface. Emily and I arrived together, determined but nervous. We knew what needed to happen, but I didn't expect Mark to strike back so ruthlessly. The moment he saw us, his smile vanished. His eyes narrowed, and he immediately began whispering to his friends, to the wedding planner, even to Emily's relatives. He painted me as the villain, claiming I had brainwashed Emily, tried to steal her happiness, and interfered in matters that don't concern me. Slowly, the murmurs in the hall shifted. Some guests looked uncertain, glancing between Emily and me. Even relatives we had trusted seemed hesitant, unsure which side to take. Emily's hands trembled as she held mine. "Mom, they're listening to him," she whispered. I squeezed her hand. "Don't worry, we have proof, just wait." Mark's manipulation didn't stop there. He had prepared carefully. When the officiant asked him to step forward, he turned toward the crowd and told a polished story about how Emily had been influenced by a controlling parent, that I had supposedly threatened and pressured her into canceling the wedding. Gasps spread across the hall. I felt my chest tighten. Some people even whispered in agreement, nodding as if my years of love and support didn't exist. Then came the threats. Quietly, he pulled Emily aside, speaking in a low, harsh voice. "If you go through with this, your life will be ruined," he hissed. "Your friends, your job, your family, they'll all turn against you. Think carefully." Emily's face went pale. I could see the fear in her eyes, the same fear I had seen months ago in that apartment, but now amplified by public humiliation. Mark's allies in the hall began reinforcing his lies. A few of Emily's friends, swayed by his charm and confidence, started whispering to others. Even some relatives began questioning our motives, as if I were the one breaking this day instead of the man who had isolated and intimidated my daughter for months. Every sneer, every sideways glance felt like a blow. I felt anger rise, but I forced myself to stay calm. I had prepared for this. I had gathered evidence. This was exactly why we had documented everything: the videos, the neighbor's notebook, Sarah's firsthand account. I just needed the right moment to show the truth. Meanwhile, Emily struggled to hold her composure. She wanted to go through with the ceremony, to please everyone else and avoid further judgment, but I knew she was torn. The villain had planted seeds of doubt, fear, and guilt. He had turned friends and family against her, and the weight of public opinion pressed down like a heavy hand. As the ceremony began, the tension was unbearable. Every smile seemed forced, every step down the aisle a battle. Mark's gaze was sharp, calculating. He was ready to exploit every hesitation, every flicker of fear. I realized then that this wasn't just a test of courage, it was a full-scale psychological war, designed to break Emily's spirit before she even had a chance to stand up for herself. I took a deep breath and reminded myself, the villain's strength lies in secrecy and manipulation. Once the truth comes out, his power disappears. I glanced at Emily, who looked at me with a mixture of fear and trust, and I knew we were ready to fight back. Mark's attacks had reached their peak. He had isolated, threatened, and humiliated. The crowd's doubt, the whispers, the sideways glances, all of it weighed heavily on us. But beneath that pressure, I felt a strange clarity. This was the moment when courage mattered the most. Every lie he had told, every manipulation he had orchestrated, would now face the light of truth. The storm had reached its breaking point. Now, it was time for the confrontation that would determine not just the wedding, but Emily's freedom and the villain's true face. Just when the tension in the wedding hall felt unbearable, a quiet voice cut through the whispers. "I think it's time someone told the truth." All eyes turned to a woman standing near the back. She was elegantly dressed, her expression serious yet hesitant. I recognized her immediately. Samantha, Mark's longtime friend, and as it would soon become clear, the woman who had often seen the real side of him. She had always been in the shadows, watching, knowing, but never speaking. Until now. Samantha stepped forward, holding a small envelope in her hands. "I've seen things that nobody else has, and I can't let an innocent person get hurt because of his lies." Her voice was steady, and for the first time that day, it cut through Mark's carefully constructed illusion. Emily's head shot up, hope flickering in her eyes. I felt a weight lift from my chest. "Samantha, what is it?" I whispered, though my voice carried enough for the nearest guests to hear. Samantha opened the envelope and began revealing details she had secretly recorded over the past few months. There were messages, voice notes, even a few photos showing Mark manipulating Emily, berating her, and isolating her from friends and family. The evidence was irrefutable. She spoke of times when he had screamed at Emily in private, threatening her, controlling her, and humiliating her for his own gain. Gasps echoed through the hall. Mark's confident posture faltered. His mouth opened as if to speak, but no words came. The carefully built facade of charm and control began to crumble, revealing the man we had all suspected, the cruel, selfish manipulator who had terrorized his fiancée behind closed doors. Emily clutched my hand tightly, tears filling her eyes. "Mom, it's true. He's been lying. He really is like this." Her voice trembled, but it was filled with relief, the kind that comes after months of fear and doubt. I felt a surge of hope I hadn't allowed myself in weeks. For the first time, the wedding hall seemed less like a battlefield and more like a place where justice could be served. Samantha continued, calmly detailing each instance, each manipulation, making sure that every guest understood the truth. Even the relatives who had begun to question me now shifted their stance, their eyes softening with realization and sympathy. Mark's face twisted in anger and disbelief. "You can't do this," he shouted. but his voice lacked the authority it once had. The tide had turned. The truth was in the open, and the carefully spun lies could no longer hold any power over Emily or the crowd. For the first time that day, I could see a glimmer of hope not just for Emily, but for both of us. The villain's control was slipping. The support of allies, Samantha, Sarah, Mrs. Thompson, and even a few relatives, gave us momentum. It was enough to stand up, to reclaim dignity, and to confront the chaos head-on. I squeezed Emily's hand. "We've got this, baby. No more fear, no more lies." Her eyes met mine, shining with courage for the first time that day. Together, we were ready to face Mark and ensure the truth could no longer be ignored. The first step toward justice had been taken, and the final confrontation, the climax of this emotional storm, was now within reach. The hall had gone silent. Every guest, every relative, every friend was watching. Mark's smug expression had vanished, replaced by shock and disbelief. Samantha had stepped forward, handing the envelope and recordings to the wedding planner, who in turn presented them to the officiant. The evidence, messages, videos, and eyewitness accounts, was undeniable. I took a deep breath and stood beside Emily, my hand on her shoulder. "Everyone here deserves the truth," I said. "Mark has been manipulating, isolating, and humiliating Emily. This is not a marriage built on love, it's a lie." Gasps and murmurs swept through the crowd. Emily's friends came forward, sharing their first-hand experiences of his cruel words and controlling behavior. Mrs. Thompson described the threats she had witnessed from across the hallway. Sarah played the video clip of Mark yelling at Emily, her face wet with tears. Each piece of evidence stacked on top of the next, forming a clear, undeniable picture. Mark's face turned red with rage. "This is fake! None of this is true!" he shouted, his voice cracking. But nobody believed him. His arrogance, his charm, his control, they were shattered. The crowd, once uncertain, now murmured in support of Emily. The whispers of doubt about the mother and daughter disappeared completely. The officiant stepped back. "Given these revelations, this ceremony cannot continue," he said firmly. "We cannot, in good conscience, proceed." Emily looked at me, relief washing over her. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "Thank you, Mom, for never giving up on me." I hugged her tightly, feeling years of fear and tension finally melt away. Mark tried one last attempt, glaring at Emily. "You'll regret this," he spat, but even his threats sounded hollow now. The witnesses, the recordings, the legal advice, and the courage of a mother-daughter bond had stripped him of every ounce of power. The wedding was officially canceled. Justice, in its simplest form, had been delivered. Emily was safe, free from manipulation, and surrounded by those who truly loved her. Mark left the hall in humiliation, exposed for the person he really was. For the first time that day, I felt peace. The storm had passed. The lies had been uncovered. And Emily, my brave, resilient daughter, had reclaimed her life. The emotional weight lifted, leaving behind relief, love, and the quiet satisfaction of truth finally prevailing. The days after the wedding were quiet, almost surreal. Emily and I spent hours talking, laughing, and crying together, finally able to breathe without fear or tension. She started seeing a counselor, learning to trust again and rebuild her confidence. I watched her rediscover the joy that Mark had tried to steal, and it filled me with a mixture of relief and pride. Friends and relatives who had doubted us slowly came around, apologizing for their hesitation and offering support. The community we thought had turned its back on us proved capable of understanding and compassion once the truth was revealed. It wasn't just Emily who was healing. It was everyone around her, learning that silence and blind trust could allow harm to persist. I returned to my routine, but life felt different now. Every smile, every hug, every simple moment carried new meaning. I realized that love is more than presence. It is protection, understanding, and courage. Standing by Emily, witnessing her strength, reminded me why I had never given up. As I reflect on those dark days, I understand that this victory is not just mine. It is for every child silenced by fear, every parent dismissed when trying to protect their loved ones, and every person trapped by lies and manipulation. Standing up, speaking the truth, and refusing to back down matters. it can change lives. Emily and I are slowly rebuilding, stronger and wiser than before. The bond we feared was broken has only deepened, tempered by struggle and perseverance. And while scars remain, they are a testament to survival, love, and courage. This chapter may have ended, but the lesson is timeless. The truth will always find its way, and courage, no matter how small, can become a force that protects, heals, and inspires. The story you have just heard has had names and places changed, too. Protect the identity of the people involved. We don't tell it to judge, but in the hope that someone will listen and reflect how many mothers are suffering in silence within their own homes. I sincerely wonder if you were in my place, what would you do? Would you remain silent to keep the peace, or would you face everything to reclaim your voice? I want to know your opinion, because every story can be a light on someone else's path. God always blesses, and I firmly believe that courage will lead us to better days.